Ready to go?
Hello, everybody. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the first meeting of this Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee for this term of council. I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. As we gather today, I would respectfully acknowledge on behalf of council and the community that the city of Pembroke resides on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on whose traditional territory we reside. Okay, with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And the first item of business is the appointment of a chair and a vice chair. So beginning with the election of a chair, I would request nominations from the floor.
I would nominate, help me. Gary said Gary.
Okay.
I'll second the nomination.
Actually, I'm sorry. I have to follow a very, very strict order here. I need to ask Mr. Severin, will you let your name stand? You will? Okay. And now I have to request 3 times repeatedly for further nominations from the floor. Are there any further nominations from the floor? Seeing none. Further nominations from the floor? Seeing none. Further nominations from the floor? Okay. With that, congratulations, Mr. Severin. You are now the chair of this committee. So I will now turn the chair over to you for the election of the vice chair.
Congratulations, Mr. Chair, and welcome everyone. Pleased to see everyone.
I will now call for nominations for vice chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Severin, if you could just ensure when you're speaking that your microphone is on. Oh, just press the button once.
I'll now call for nominations. Technology.
Just a single push each time.
Okay,
Now it's on.
now I'll call for nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Romeo Levasseur for vice chair.
Is there a seconder or?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Levasseur, will you let your name
Yeah.
stand?
Yes, I would.
Oh, okay. Are there further nominations from the floor? Seeing none, are there further nominations from the floor? Seeing none, are there further nominations from the floor? If not, then declare nominations closed, and congratulations, Romeo.
Thank you very much.
We now call for approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? By
So move, Mr. Chair.
seconded by Marcel. Any objection? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. The minutes of the meeting of November the 14th having been distributed. I'm guessing who were the Roman? Yeah, there are people here that were probably at that meeting. Can I have a motion to approve these minutes?
Actually, it'll be an approval of receiving the minutes because we haven't got a
Okay.
quorum here to pass them.
Thank
That
you.
were present,
Thank you.
but we can have a motion to accept that the fact had been received.
Thank you. And will you make that motion?
Yeah.
A seconder, please. Any objection? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? If not, thank you. We'll move on. New business. First piece of new business is Z-1 2023 574 Pembroke Street East. The Alex Plummer property. Owen, have you got something for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant, Alex Plummer, has submitted a site plan proposing the construction of a semi-detached dwelling, 2 dwelling units, with 2 secondary dwelling units for a total of 4 dwelling units at 574 Pembroke Street East. 574 Pembroke Street East is currently zoned residential type 1, R1, by zoning bylaw 2020-05, which only allows for single detached dwellings. A single detached dwelling constructed in 1909 exists on the property. According to the applicant's proposal, this existing building would be demolished to make way for the proposed new development. While the neighborhood immediately to the south of 574 Pembroke Street East is largely made up of single detached dwellings in R1 zones, Pembroke Street East itself is lined with a diverse mixture of residential and commercial zoning, from R1s to R4s, and from local commercial to highway commercial exception zones, such as the Metro shopping business, and even institutional within a 1 kilometer distance of 574 Pembroke Street East. Immediately abutting the property of this application is 580 Pembroke Street East, which itself was recently subject to an approved zoning bylaw amendment, file Z-6 2021, which granted the exact relief being requested by this current application. Previously vacant land, 580 Pembroke Street East, now housing newly constructed with building permit 2022-029, semi-detached dwellings with 2 secondary dwelling units for a total of 4 dwelling units. The proposed development of this application will mirror the new construction found at immediately abutting 580 Pembroke Street East. 574 Pembroke Street East easily meets and or exceeds all required R2 zone provisions for a semi-detached dwelling, including I'm just going to read the items. I'm not going to read the measurements. They are itemized on your reports, but minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage, minimum lot depth, minimum front yard setback, minimum rear yard setback, and minimum interior side yard setback. All other R2 provisions for semi-detached dwellings are met or exceeded. Therefore, this application is strongly in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. Regarding parking, the zoning bylaw section 3.292 requires a minimum of 2 spaces per dwelling unit for semi-detached dwellings and a single space per dwelling unit for secondary dwelling units. This means that the proposed development would require 6 standard parking spaces. According to the submitted site plan, the development can accommodate more than the required 6 spaces. However, relief is required to allow for these spaces to be in the form of 2 driveways, each with a width of 20 feet. Section 3.2911 states that the width of a driveway shall not exceed 20 feet. Therefore, relief of 20 feet is requested to be included under the proposed site-specific zoning. Further, section 3.297D states the minimum distance between 2 separate driveways on 1 lot shall be 25 feet. As the separation distance shown on the submitted site plan is 9 feet, 16 feet short of the requirement, this relief is also requested under the proposed site-specific zoning. The property at 574 Pembroke Street East is designated residential under the city's official plan 2016. This application is strongly in keeping with the intent of the official plan. According to section 4.2.2.15 of the official plan, the city of Pembroke will encourage all forms of residential intensification that creates a potential supply of new housing units. Residential intensification will be encouraged in the built-up areas of the city where there is sufficient existing or planned infrastructure to accommodate such development. Council's policy is that through the intensification of land use in existing built-up areas involving infill, redevelopment, and the conversion of existing buildings, Pembroke will continue to accommodate new residential units within the already built-up area. The proposed zoning is in keeping with this direction in the official plan. as the proposed semi-detached dwelling with secondary dwelling units constructed on existing residential land will contribute to intensifying housing stock in an already built-up area. Further, section 4.2.2.12 aims to promote efficient and pleasant residential environments, and that neighborhoods shall be maintained to include such facilities as a park, school, local shopping facilities, a community center, and located within a 1 kilometer radius of 574 Pembroke Street East. There is Highview Public School and Our Lady of Lourdes Elementary School, Kinsman Park and Kinsman Pool, Care for Health and Community Services, and the highway commercial zones along Pembroke Street East. Further, section 4.2.2.110 of the official plan states all residential development shall be adequately serviced with municipal water and sewer services, waste disposal, and utilities, subject to prior verification that there is adequate capacity. Pembroke Street East currently has full water, sanitary, and storm sewer servicing, and the requirement of a building permit to construct the semi-detached dwelling will trigger the approval of the operations department to ensure adequate servicing capacity to the property. 574 Pembroke Street East is located directly on Pembroke Street East, which is designated by Schedule B of the official plan as an arterial road. This provides for strong vehicular transportation links to both the east and west ends of the city via Pembroke Streets East and West, as well as to the arterials of McKay Street, River Road, Paul Martin Drive, and Angus Campbell Drive, and Bell Street. For pedestrian traffic, Pembroke Street East has sidewalks on both its northern and southern sides. Regarding the provincial policy statement of 2020, section 1.1.3.2 states land use patterns within settlement areas shall also be based on a range of uses and opportunities for intensification and redevelopment where this can be accommodated. Additionally, it states that planning authorities shall provide for an appropriate range and mix of housing options and densities to meet projected market-based and affordable housing needs of current and future residents. This application promotes intensification by increasing the number of dwelling units provided on the property by 3 and simultaneously increasing the mixture of housing density options. Therefore, this application is consistent with the current provincial policy statement, and the planning department is recommending the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment for 574 Pembroke Street East from a residential type 1 R1 zone to a residential type 2 special exception 34 zone.
Mr. Plummer is here with us, and let's acknowledge that. And can we have a motion of approval? Moved by Keith, seconded by Marcel. Any discussion? Yes.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Plummer. And I don't believe this is your only recent build.
No, I have two actually. Well, we're mirroring the same one, basically right beside it. So it's gonna look.
So I'm actually quite thankful for the work that you've been doing in the city, particularly with these infilling efforts. I think, as all of us around this table are aware, Pembroke only has so much land. We are landlocked,
Right.
And so these infills are actually quite important in terms of getting new builds and those kinds of things. It also makes the local area look fairly nice, and my having an office almost across the street, I certainly appreciate that. My only concern, and this is the only one that I have, is the driveway and the in particular the part between the driveway. As someone that uses Nelson Street quite a lot, I know there was a build on Nelson Street of several rows, and the problem that I find is that when the driveways are that close in the winter, when they're shoveling, the snowbanks actually get exceedingly high. And there has been more than one occasion that just I have almost taken out the front end of a car coming out of those particular driveways. So that is my only concern, is that by putting the driveway so close, I'm worried that there would be an intensification. And that's a very busy street. I mean, we're talking about Pembroke Street. So that is my one and only concern. But other than that, I'm very thankful for your application. and more generally for the work that you're doing. But that is one concern that I've experienced and that I could foresee happening again here.
Right, sure. We could look into removal of the snow that could build up then again too as well. In the location and between the two buildings, there is going to be a buffer zone that we can push snow up in the center. Right now, we can't because the lay of the land of how it goes up, but we can certainly look into that. Yeah.
Yes, Romeo.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for being a developer and actually, I guess, increasing number of units available in our community from 1 to 4. I think that the operative words here are intensification and redevelopment. And I think that here's a prime example of that occurring. And I'd like to add a third one too, and with all due respect to the present home that's there, it will certainly improve the streetscape in that particular area. The house is pretty close to the road.
It is.
And you're planning on tearing it down. And I'm assuming that the plans you'll be shoving the home further up to line up with the others that's just been
That's
built
right.
there.
Actually, we're going to be pushed back a little bit further
Yeah.
too.
So that'll be an improvement and that might meet the concern that Councillor Keel has brought up, that you'll have more room to be able to deal with the snow. So I certainly support the application. Matter of fact, I don't know if we have much choice, to be frank with you, because under the Build Faster Act, Bill 23, is pretty well fait accompli, as we would say, that it should be done. And so no problem and no question about supporting this application. I do have a minor little concern, which is related to what Councillor Keel mentioned. It's the slope of the driveway.
Yes.
I drive by there a lot, and I look at that slope and I'm saying, I know how my driveway can get pretty slippery and I haven't got much of a slope. And so I sure hope that that's something whenever a site plan agreement will be looked at, that our engineering department will look at the kind of slope that you're going to perform there or how the driveway is going to be set up. But other than that, I think it's again, a very thank you for developing that. And we hope you'll continue doing it. I don't know how far west you can go because I don't know if the resting nuns would appreciate you building on their property. But certainly what you've done already is excellent.
Thank you.
With snow there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you as well. I have the same comments about development and, building places for people to live. Again, I have a problem with some slope issues. Is the municipality on the hook as far as the gradient or safety applications for slopes and driveways? Is there anything under the building code that would address that? Especially, I mean, if you're in a very busy street, there's school buses, et cetera. If a vehicle after freezing rain decides to take a little tour, that can happen. And as you said, you have a very minor grade in your own driveway, treacherous that can be. Perhaps Mr. Plummer can answer that, or maybe our building person. Are there any restrictions as to slope gradient when building for safety purposes?
If we can, yeah. Please. Yes,
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as this development is considered low density from a planning perspective, there is no site plan approval process which removes any reference to grading in terms of this application. But during the building permit application process, which will be followed through with, that might get addressed. So I'll let the chief building official speak to it from that perspective.
thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not aware of a specific requirement for grading for the driveway, but I will look into that at the time of permit application, and we'll definitely work with the developer to meet that code requirement if there is one.
Thank you for everyone's protection, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
MJ?
Okay.
Thank you. I have I have a quick question with regards to whether we received any submissions for or against with regards to this application.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we received a single informational inquiry. That gentleman is actually present this evening. So I'm not sure if you want to ask him if he has any questions, but he is present. We have received no submissions of support or objection.
Yes, could you state your name, and if you have, please come forward, and if you have anything you want to say?
Sure.
Good. Thank you. State your name, please, and
Joseph Reese.
yes, and
I live at 558 Pembroke Street East. So the house in question is directly next door to my place. So they've got to go through my house in order to get to the graveyard across the road.
okay.
All right, now, good point about the driveways. Mr. and Mrs. Gibbons, when they lived next door to me, I snow blowed their driveway, and it's fairly steep. As long as you keep the salt on that, you'll never have an issue in the wintertime. As far as snow removal, once everything's been laid out the way that I think it's going to be laid out, you should have no problem with the snow removal there at all. Other than that, I'm not against anything that's going to happen there.
Any questions? Thank you very, yes,
I've
okay.
lived in my house 22 years,
Oh, good.
so I've got lots of experience with that corner.
Thank you very much. Well, you're certainly speaking in favor as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything further? Yes.
Yes, I do have a question for Mr. Plummer.
Yes. Oh, yeah, if you get, yeah, we still have a question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for this proposal. I wanted to ask you what, if you have planned to make the new property accessible, wheelchair accessible?
Right. With this property, no, because the sloping of everything that's concerned with everybody.
Mhm.
It's not, it would not be accessible for a wheelchair, unfortunately.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all I had for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything further? Yes.
Mr.
Marcel.
Chair, I just wanted to support the driveway issue because if you could just go down east from that location, the houses on the right-hand side have extremely steep driveways. And there doesn't seem to be any problem there. In fact, I have personally snowblowed some driveways there for a couple of people. And like the gentleman said, all I do is put some extra salt down, maybe sand if it's really bad, but it's not a problem. I don't see that as an issue. I think the only thing we have to agree on here is what Mr. Hutton referred to. And that's the difference in the spread between the two houses. And I don't see a problem with that either, because if you look at our street, between the houses, we sometimes don't have 20 feet.
Right.
And the snow removal from the city, from my experience, and I've been there since '85, has been excellent. We don't have any major problems, and there's been no accidents on that street that you and I know of anyway.
No, that's for sure.
I think that's my comments, Mr. Chair, and I don't see any problem with this proposal.
Thank you, Marcel. Anything further? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of this? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
And this will then go to council. Now I thank you, Mr. Plummer. Okay. First zoning bylaw amendment application. Owen, can you get some input here, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just be presenting these reports from Colleen Soriol, our Director of Planning, Building and Bylaw, who unfortunately is unable to be with us this evening. If it's all right with you, I'm going to read the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment piece first. and then we'll move to the More Homes Built Faster Act, if there are no objections to that. Okay, so again, I'd like to welcome you all to this term of the Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee. We'll be moving through as future meetings occur. We'll have an information item on each of the different applications that we handle. And the first one is official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. So an official plan is a visionary document that describes a municipality's council's policies on how the land in the municipality should be used. It helps to ensure that future planning and development will meet the specific needs of the community. An official plan deals mainly with issues such as where new housing, industry, commercial uses, etc., will be located. The Planning Act requires that every municipality in Ontario have an official plan. So a municipality needs an official plan for the following reasons: to let the public know what the municipality's general land use planning policies are, to make sure that growth is coordinated and meets the needs of the community. It helps all members of the community understand how their land may be used now and in the future. It provides a framework for establishing the city's zoning bylaw, and the official plan must conform to the province's provincial policy statement. And the provincial policy statement is the statement of the government's policies on land use planning. It applies province-wide and provides clear policy direction on land use planning to promote strong communities, a strong economy, and a clean and healthy environment. Policies include natural heritage, cultural heritage, archaeology, natural hazards, sewage, water and stormwater, development and land use patterns, housing, etc. Our current provincial policy statement is from 2020. Moving on, the city's official plan, our current official plan, was approved in 2016. And under the Planning Act, a review of the official plan is required every 10 years. So we will come up for review in 2026. We will have a new official plan. A zoning bylaw controls the land use in a community. It states exactly how land may be used, where buildings and other structures can be located on properties, the types of buildings that are permitted and how they may be used. And finally, the lot sizes, dimensions, parking requirements, building heights, and setbacks. The Planning Act also requires that a comprehensive zoning bylaw be updated within 3 years of an official plan approval. The city's current zoning bylaw 2020-05, was approved in January of 2020. If an applicant wishes to change the present official plan designation and or the zoning of their property, then an official plan amendment and or zoning bylaw amendment is required. The applicant must fill out an application. A notice is sent by the city to all adjacent property owners within a 120-meter radius. As well, a notice is placed on the property, or if the amendment would affect all property owners in the city, a notice can be placed in the local newspaper. 2 public meetings are held. The first is the Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee, as everybody is aware tonight. And the second is a public meeting of council. So this application, I believe, will go to a public meeting of council in February. The Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee makes a recommendation to council as to whether or not the official plan amendment and or zoning bylaw amendment should be approved. Council then makes the final decision. If an appeal is received within 20 days, the whole file must be sent to the Ontario Land Tribunal and a hearing will be scheduled. The Ontario Land Tribunal decision is final. In terms of financial implications, the present cost for a zoning bylaw amendment is $750 plus HST. The present cost of an official plan amendment is $900 plus HST. And if you are doing them concurrently, the cost is $1,200 plus HST.
Any discussion? Yes, Romeo.
I guess in the shadow of Bill 23, I'm kind of wondering how our official plan, which we don't have to renew until 2026. In the meantime, we've got 4 years where we might have Bill 23 overshadowing it. And how is it going to mesh with our official plan? Do you see our official plan requiring some upgrades and some renewal well before that? And you mentioned the cost. I was under the impression that a lot of those costs were going to disappear under Bill 23. Anyways, that's the, I guess, wait to be seen.
Through you, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. In terms of the cost of official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, those are not at this point. They are not impacted by Bill 23, which has received royal assent. And in terms of the official plan being updated, if it's all right, we'll cover that in the next educational piece.
Further discussion on this first piece? Yes. Ed?
Just a question, with the new bill, Bill 23, and the application to the tribunal, has that changed in any essence? I've read a few articles that said that the tribunal's decisions may be non-functioning, or maybe am I out of whack there?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So in the initial, at first reading, Bill 23 did remove the appeal process for third-party appeals for every application we deal with. So from official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, minor variances, consents. However, after first reading, that was for zoning bylaw and official plan amendments, that was struck out. And so the bill that received royal assent on November 28th does not include the striking of third-party appeals for zoning bylaw and official plan amendments, only minor variances and consent applications.
Yes, Romeo?
Repeat that again.
Mhm.
Am I missing something here? You're telling me that they won't be able to appeal what aspect?
If it's all right, I actually, that will be covered in the next piece, if that's
Yes,
okay.
Yes, thank you. Anything further to this discussion? Okay, we'll move on to the second part of this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is also from Colleen Sorio. So on October 25th, 2022, the province of Ontario introduced Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022. Said bill received royal assent on November 28th, 2022. The overall goal of this act is to increase housing supply by building 1.5 million homes in the next 10 years. The act amends 10 existing acts accompanied by associated regulations. While the stated objectives of the act are to support increased housing supply, to improve housing affordability, and to facilitate more timely approvals, the various amendments do not serve this intent and will result in the loss of environmental protections, heritage conservation, urban design, and accountability to the public, in addition to significant financial implications for municipalities. The act not only threatens the very foundation of land use planning in Ontario, but its anticipated financial implications will result in losses of revenue that support growth, which will force council to choose between either reducing service levels or transferring the financial burden of growth to the taxpayer. Additional regulations are anticipated to be released by the province in support of the new act. In the absence of all proposed amendments, the entirety of potential impact on the city of Pembroke is not yet known. Staff will continue to review any further proposed legislation presented by the province and will provide further reports considering potential effects to the city of Pembroke as necessary. The key impacts of the current act are outlined in the following sections. So the Planning Act, the new act amends the Planning Act in the following ways. Site plan approval. The act removes exterior design as a consideration in the process and no longer requires developments of 10 or fewer residential units to receive site plan approval. This is currently in effect as of November 28th, 2022. The removal of exterior appearance considerations from the site plan review process is anticipated to result in reduced built form quality, negative impact to the streetscape, and less integration between new developments and the existing community character. In short, the city is now stripped of a primary quality control mechanism to promote good design. The city's existing site plan control bylaw 2022-52, establishes that developments of 3 or more residential units are subject to site plan approval. Now that the act has been passed, the city's site plan control bylaw must be amended to state 11 or more residential units will be subject to site plan approval. For developments of 10 residential units or less, the city will have to look at enacting a site alteration bylaw. Site alteration is defined as any alteration to the existing grade of land through the movement, removal, or placement of fill. Any alteration to the grade of the land, including filling, dumping, extracting, or moving soil, must be done in compliance with the bylaw. This bylaw would at least ensure that drainage issues are dealt with for the development now that 10 units or less are not subject to site plan approval. Minor variances, severances, official plan amendments, and zoning bylaw amendments. The act eliminates the right of appeal for third parties, residents, from from minor variance and consent applications. This prohibition on third-party appeals is retroactive to October 25th, 2022. Appeals are now, for these applications, are now limited to the applicant, public bodies, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and a list of specified persons that primarily consist of infrastructure providers such as utility companies, railways, and telecommunication companies. Draft plans of subdivision. There is now no longer going to be a requirement to host a public meeting prior to the approval of a draft plan of subdivision. Additional residential units. The new act now requires that official plans and zoning bylaws permit second and third residential units as of right in a detached, semi-detached, or townhouse dwelling. The units can be provided both interior to the principal dwelling or one interior and one detached, example given being a laneway or garden suite. This does not require a rezoning, nor do the neighbors have to be notified. There are no appeal rights for these additional units. The city's existing official plan and zoning bylaw permit one accessory dwelling unit, one secondary dwelling unit. One parking space is required for each of these additional units. An amendment to the city's official plan and zoning bylaw would be required. Just moving on to the Conservation Authorities Act, even though we do not have a conservation authority in Renfrew County, there is significant change under the act that would strip the role of conservation authorities when they review planning applications. The Heritage Act. Similarly, we do not have a large number of buildings in the city of Pembroke designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, but their ability to comment on planning applications has been reduced. Very significantly, the Development Charges Act. The city approved its most recent development charges bylaw 2021-26 on May 4th, 2021. Development charges are a growth funding tool to recover costs associated with growth as an alternative to those costs being paid for by existing taxpayers through property taxes, increased rates and fees, water and wastewater bills. The act now permits residential unit exemptions, new statutory exemptions, mandatory phase-in development charges, rental housing discounts, and interest rates on eligible installment plans, background study preparation, eligible capital costs to be funded by development charges, and the allocation of funds received. These changes will reduce funding to build the infrastructure that housing growth needs, and the city will have to make the decision to reduce service levels or raise property taxes to fund growth-related costs. Parkland dedication. The city has used parkland dedication as a means to acquire land for parks purposes since 1990. The act now has new statutory exemptions. Thus, parkland dedication does not apply to nonprofit housing, additional residential units, and there are discounts for affordable housing, attainable housing, and affordable residential units. These regulations have not yet been released. So this is one of the items, as mentioned before, that we don't know the full impacts of at this point. And the financial implications, I believe, were mainly summed up under development charges. Staff will continue to analyze the proposed regulations of the act and provide additional financial implications to the city as they become apparent.
Discussion.
Wow.
Yes.
So this is course, I think the second time that Councillor Jackano and I got this report, and I still caught myself shaking my head at times. This is one of the worst land use planning pieces of legislation that the province has introduced in years. It does nothing but take away decision-making powers from what I would argue is those that know best, the people in the community that it's serving, and the financial implications. I think we had asked, or I had asked Colleen to essentially take the changes that have come into place, and if they were applied against last year, and the report that council is going to get tomorrow afternoon is that if this was in place in 2022, it would have put a dent of $42,000 into our budgets. I mean, it's not a small problem, and it's only going to continue to cause issues for years. I know we need housing. That's very clear. In fact, Councillor Jack and I sat together at the Legion meeting on housing. We know that it's an issue, but instead of using a scalpel, this government's using a sledgehammer to try and create more housing. One of my questions was, does this take into any consideration, our utilities, like whether or not our water and sewer on that street can handle 3-4 houses putting in extra units? And the answer was that this legislation does not care. It would be our problem to have to then go in and fix, whether it's water pressure or all those issues. And as I look around the table, I don't think I need to explain that to the people that are here. I mean, it's remarkable what has been done with this. And I think it's a big city problem that's being foisted on our small communities. I have no doubt that when you're in Toronto or Mississauga or Brampton, that infilling is no longer available even. That you need to start getting creative and putting in second units and turning garages and whatnot. But our smaller and rural communities, we don't have that kind of problem. We have lots of areas in order to look at things the way that we've always had, which is to get plans and to have the municipality look over them. So I was not even remotely as short and sweet as I was thinking, but it's a horrible piece of legislation. I do note that there are times where for example, this committee did not have, just as an example, I mean, obviously we approved it unanimously. We didn't have to approve that driveway change. So if we didn't like what they're cramming into something, there are things that we still have control over for now, until maybe we get too creative and the government realizes how creative we're getting. But there are other avenues to sort of stunt this a little bit if the desire was there from the city. But for the most part, this is just an absolute.
Romeo.
It's when I first started reading parts of it in the newspaper and in some of the editorials, I was wondering what kind of a sledgehammer we've just been hit with. And immediately I said to myself, it's a big city problem that's been foisted on a lot of small communities who have been able to handle things appropriately based on the existing act. I'm not going to go through nitpicking a lot of things, but we've got some challenges ahead of us in the next 4 years in kind of dealing with some of the applications that come forward. There's a few little things, like, for example, they talk about an increased supply of housing. Fine. An increased supply of affordability.
Yeah.
Where's the line?
Yeah.
Who's going to decide what's affordable? And at what point in what community? I mean, what's affordable in Pembroke is certainly not going to be affordable in Toronto, and vice versa, or the other way around, excuse me. So, and no appeals for minor variance and severance. I think that no site plan agreements for 10 units or less. Those are just examples of things which is going to be difficult. I don't know how long that's going to be in existence. I mean, the provincial government is there for at least another 3-4 years. And whether the Ontario associations of, I'm thinking of OSAM and AMO. I don't know what kind of pressure AMO can bring upon to bring a little bit of common sense to this. But again, it's a brush that paints everything when it was meant for certain pockets of area. So I guess we're going to have to live with it. I'm not too sure what Councillor Ian was suggesting, what the city itself can do to kind of mitigate some of this. But in the meantime, like I said tonight with the application we had in front of us, we have no choice. We have no choice. Another thing is how a home will look like. It basically said there, you can put a shack in the middle of 2 homes that are worth $1 million apiece, you know, with a little bit of facade. That's in there. So this is going to be tough. I think it's a step in the wrong direction. I think there might have been other ways of approaching it, but in the meantime, it's something we're going to have to live with for the next little while. Certainly going to change our whole perspective and how we deal with applications before the council. So that's.
Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to agree with what's been said, Romeo. We're a smaller community, and as Ian said as well, you shouldn't be painting everybody with the same brush. What amazes me is, you know, the government can take 7,500 acres of conservation land, land such as the Oaks Moraine, and hand it over to developers and say, here you go. You can build whatever you like on here. And we're going to come up with 7,500 acres of conservation land somewhere else to offset that. To me, that doesn't make any sense. You know, these are sensitive land areas that control water, marshlands, wild animals, different species of animals, and many are becoming extinct within, you know, as things start to grow, animals start to disappear. The municipal powers, we have no teeth left in my estimation. At one time, you know, people would come here, and if you thought it was incorrect or wasn't fitting the, you know, the circumstances of the day, you'd be able basically to say, you know, no, we don't agree with that. You take a vote and you had some power. Right now, I think we're becoming just a faux pas committee that's set up for purposes of government to say that, yes, you do have a committee, but no, you don't have any power. So I think what has to happen perhaps is, and I know talking to our planner, and, you know, and she's in a sensitive position as well. She's got to give us the, you know, the questions that are asked. She's got to give us the proper answers. But I have a feel that the last conference she went to, you know, people in her profession that she's dealing with are not happy with this. So it's not just us. And I think what has to happen, there's got to be some, you know, got to be some action to government, whether it's a resolution from this council, sending it out to every municipality in the province of Ontario for support to ensure that certain changes may be made so that the powers that we originally were given back, they've taken them back again. At one time, you know, we had no power. And a little bit over time, the government said, yes, municipalities should have more power to make their own decisions. So be it. Now you don't have that again. So I think it should be a resolution from a council, doesn't matter where it comes from, or from the county of Renfrew, saying, no, we don't agree with this. Yes, we understand people need housing, but let's look at the circumstances and where it is.
Further discussion.
I just want to thank the planner and the planning technician for preparing this report. I go in the same direction as Mr. So that's all.
So what action, do we need any action on this or just okay? Thank you for the report. Past decision update. that where we? Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Yes.
At the final meeting of the last term's Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee, a concurrent application for consent to sever and a minor variance was heard and approved by this committee for 560 Center Street. Those applications have both passed their applicable 20-day appeal period successfully. The minor variance is thus considered final, and the consent to sever has outstanding conditions that remain to be fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, February the 27th, 2023. Can I ask for a motion to adjourn? Moved by Ian, seconded by Romeo. We have